I want to tell you today about my arrest at Mark Tree, Arkansas, in 19 January, about the middle of January in 1935. It's important because it was on the front page of most most newspapers across the country, and New York Times from then on, they wanted to see anything that Mitchell or anybody wrote, and it's what it was the first publicity we'd had, really, and I was a workers' education teacher, federal teacher at the time, but I was also on the board of the Southern Tenant Farmers Union. And Mitchell had taken a group of sharecroppers with him to Washington, D.C. To try to get the Roosevelt administration to move. And but he was due back on that day, and he had wired me to chair the meeting, and they'd get there hopefully before the crowd left, and they did. This was right in the middle of Mark Tree. There was a platform there. We have been using it from time to time, and everybody else did too, see. And the sharecroppers and other people in the Tyranza and Mark Tree especially, planters and sharecroppers, they were all out, 400 or 500 of them. And the platform was about 5 feet high, and there's only 2 places to climb up on. And I opened the meeting and told them about the night before at the superintendent of schools in Tyranza had visited the country schoolhouse where I was having a class on unionism, and which I was supposed to do as a federal teacher. And they broke up the meeting, and the superintendent wanted me to see me the next morning, which happened to be the morning of the day that we held this afternoon meeting. And he had threatened me if I didn't stop those kind of meetings in his country schools, so he'd have to see that you didn't do it anymore. And he did it in a threatening way, and I said, well, that sounds like Ku Klux Klan measure. And he said, well, yeah, it is. So I didn't argue with him anymore, but that was the background of my talk. And when I said that day that I could recruit enough sharecroppers to lynch any plantation owner in the whole Poinsett County, and that of course the sharecroppers were enthusiastic about it, threw up their hats in the air, and they the planners were there. You could tell that they weren't. They were mad about everything I was saying. So I thought I'd said about enough, and so I called McKinley to the platform. He was our vice president, and he was one of those people that could sing, and he could lead sing songs. We had several of them, and I turned the meeting over to McKinley, and I'd noticed that the sheriff and one of his deputies and his secretary were at one corner, and I figured that they were going to arrest me. So I went to. There was only two corners that you could get up and down on that 5-foot platform, and so I just walked right straight to them, and sure enough, they took hold of my arm and walked me around the corner to where they had an office there for the deputies and assistant prosecuting attorney, who was also present, and while we were in there, the clerk who had taken down, I guess, most of what I said, and she was translating it from, put it in on she used a typewriter and translated from her fast writing, and the couple of the deputies came in there and told the sheriff, he says, the crowd's getting, it's going to be, they figured they couldn't control the crowd, and then they were going to take me to Harrisburg, the county seat, and they were afraid to take me to the car because they figured that the sharecroppers would take me away from them, see. And the sheriff told them tell them to move back out of the way. Oh, no, they won't do it. Pay no attention to what I said, well, let me talk to him. And so I didn't wait till the sheriff answered. I walked right straight out, stayed right in front of the door. And at that time, the assistant prosecuting attorney says, "Oh yeah, Rodgers, they'll do what you want them to." I said, "That's right." And sure enough, McKinley, after I had told him to get clear out of sight there, and they did, and then there was 3 deputy sheriffs in the back seat, and the sheriff and I were in the front seat. I went over to the county seat. McKinney or yeah. I decided to introduce him like he was as a Mr. McKinley, and I knew that the planners wouldn't like that at all, and but he was our vice president, and in fact, he'd been active in the World War I, introducing McKinley to carry on the meeting, he's black, and he's also our vice president, and he's been active in the organizations for many years. And but the reason I thought McKinley, I just called him Mac, or I called him Mister because I knew those planners wouldn't like it, and I was correct on that. And but this incident was picked up by the newspapers, and we were on the front page of a lot of those papers for a long time, and a lot of people and didn't know what a sharecropper was. But the time Norman Thomas started on a tour and explained about sharecroppers, well, they learned before. But Mitchell once asked me about he knew that he and I both had been in tight situations, and it could have been we could have been attacked many times, and he asked, and he helped me answer the question too, but why do we take such chances, you know? And I said, well, you and I, it's something that has to be done. We just up and do it. And my own mind was that the white sharecroppers had been joining as fast as the blacks were joining the Southern Tenant Farmers Union, and but there were enough whites that the planters didn't know who to call upon to do his dirty work. The bosses didn't know who to depend on for help, and that's why there was people injured, and because they would drive past houses where the sharecroppers lived and try to shoot in there, and sometimes they hit people. And I was in and out of a lot of those homes. In Tyronza, before the union was organized, there was a Socialist Party group that Mitchell and others of his friends that he'd explained socialism to, they were active. But Thomas, when he was down there at a state convention in Tyronza, he told him afterwards that, well, you don't need a Socialist Party here. What you really need is a union. And then that's how we got started on a union. Well, I made a survey, what was printed about the Elaine massacre in the Memphis papers, which, see, it happened right after World War I. 18 or 17 or 18 or 19, I don't know exactly the time now. And I had a little time and went to one of the libraries in Memphis, and I was getting papers, and the man that was in charge of the research, he got interested in what I was doing, and he would dig up everything he had on the Elaine massacre. And the thing was, it was all on a black. It was a black union. None of the whites joined, and furthermore, none of the whites in Arkansas or any other state helped them. And they first, after the massacre, finally there was a lawyer from Kansas that came down there to help them with some of their cases. And then I said, well, told the librarian, well, our pictures not like that. We got both races standing together, have from the beginning. That made the big difference. Well, it was killed by they didn't have a chance at all because they didn't have ammunition if they had a gun. I mean, it's the Elaine sharecroppers that were trying to get better wages, and see, the sharecropper is supposed to he gets supposed to get half of the money on depending on the weight of that cotton they brought in. But the gin people wouldn't gave all the money to the planters, and the planters were supposed to divide it up too, but most of them didn't. We knew that we didn't know how far we'd be able to go, but actually, before we got through with February, we knew that we had attracted the attention of the country, and if we won, why, we're really going to be down as a real progress. For instance, one of the writers in the New York Times had a series of articles, and this time I'm going to be talking about myself. The guy says, well, there's lots of trouble brewing in the Delta section of Arkansas, and in the center of that is a young Methodist preacher, Ward Rodgers, and of course we hadn't thought about getting all that publicity, but it continued, and Mitchell was awful good on if something happened, why he could write in just a few words and send it off to Washington and New York. Well, H.L. Mitchell had a younger brother. His name was Ed, but we called Little Boy. And he'd been to sea several times, but he visited us every time he could get off the boat. And so he'd been. One day nothing seemed to be happening. So he says, let's stop and get a newspaper and see what we're doing today. All of us got a kick out of that. Well, it happened this way. Mitchell had arranged 2 meetings for me to speak, but it was the same night, same time. And he didn't realize it till the middle of the afternoon. And so he came over and told me about it, and he took me then to the Singer sewing machine company place. And then he got in touch with Coke and his brother Reed, Buddy Reed, and they went to Crittenden County, where was one of those 2 spots. And they get over there, and they Coke was giving them a talk. He was president of the Mena College at Mena, Arkansas, and he'd followed everything we'd done, and he was pretty careful what he would say. But the planters and their riding bosses came in there, and one of them had the rope, and they put it around his neck and drug him out. And Reed followed right on out. And but fortunately, a deputy sheriff from Crittenden County got there that knew me by sight, and I've forgotten his name. I didn't know his name then. And he says, "Well, this is not Ward Rodgers." So they threw the rope down, and all got in their cars and left. So that's why Coke and Reed, it was kind of like a lariat rope, but they had a real hanging knot. I couldn't. It's a great big. Well, the Roosevelt administration. You see, the Senator Robinson was the older senator from Arkansas at the time, and he was very, very conservative, and he controlled a lot of votes in the FDR's administration, and so. And he would always vote with anything that came up with the planters. But he died, and the woman, I forget her name right now, was elected, and the senator from Louisiana came up there and campaigned for her. And she would come to our meetings. When, for instance, she was at when Follett Hell called the meeting, and he had invited several, but she came, and well, I was on one of the trips to Washington, and we weren't able to get to see the Secretary of Agriculture. We saw one of his assistants, the one from University of Chicago, but he wouldn't take any stand either. He wasn't any better than Robinson. Well, Thomas told us he got in to see Roosevelt a few times, and he was talking to him, and Roosevelt says, "Well, I'm a better politician than you are." And Thomas says, "Well, naturally, you're on that side of the disc. I'm on this." Yeah, well, that not directly, but I wasn't involved with that. But they did set up finally, and the second president we had, forget his name now, but he was appointed to represent us as a tenant. I think they had about a dozen people on it, and on one. First they had they didn't have any. Well, the cotton picking machine was invented right there in Memphis, and the guy, two brothers that invented it, he contacted Mitchell, and he invited Mitchell to come up and see the first test of it, and Mitchell took me with him, and they had it fixed up only for one row at a time. They used a unit over 1, 2, or 3 now. And this was a great long cotton row, and it went up to the other end and back, and it had 250 pounds of cotton. Well, now, 250 pounds is a good day's work, see, and this was made in about 20 minutes. So Mitchell and I knew that our Sharecroppers Union wasn't going to be here too long, because the cotton picking is they see in the spring they have cotton chopping. They thin it out. Well, you can thin that with a tractor going across, but maybe it wouldn't be quite as good as a man with a hoe. But which joke? Well, we went back to the hotel, and he talked to me for a while, and then I went. He was going up to his room, and I went back to the newspaper office, and I told him what had happened, and so the editor, publisher, he called the paper in New Orleans, and they'd never heard of him. See, so the whole thing was a setup. See, and the next day I went over to about 5 o'clock when the police come out of the city hall. All of them went home, and I waited there, and sure enough, the guy who drove us over there, he come down the steps too. And then I knew it was the police.